Hello everyone and welcome to the 30k channel dedicated to games set in the Horus Heresy. I'm your host David Brains as always, and today I've been joined by James. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
Really great to have James back. Now James has taken up the mantle of Challenger Channel, so we're shooting Challenger Channel number 9 today, which is fantastic news. Derek was in last with his Space Wolves.
Yeah, he did well, didn't he?
Did really well, so Derek managed to beat it, but James, you got a tough list.
I hope so. It needs to be, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
You might do the business. James has got a really interesting list. He's got a load of Myrmidon Sectors.
Yeah, and Destructors. Yeah, bringing all the Myrmidons out today.
Yeah, loads. Now, don't forget, we saw James in previous games. We saw you in the large Veroni versus Iron Warriors.
Yeah, great game.
What game did we see you last in?
World Eaters Mechanicum.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
That was it, a good one.
Poor Mechanicum got absolutely smashed. Spoiler alert. So, as we mentioned before, James he's got some fairly good resources in the amount of armies and models he can choose from. So today you've gone for Mechanicum.
Yeah, I thought to take on Challenger Channel, it's got to be a tough list, isn't it? And Mechanicum, they are pretty tough.
Absolutely. Now we will remember when I took on my own challenge with my Thalax, it didn't do so well, unfortunately. But I think James got the edge. You've got a particular character that buffs the units, haven't you?
Yeah, the Secretari Axiarch. You don't see too many of them, but I thought I'd give him a go today.
Where are the rules for those found?
That's book 7, Inferno.
Okay, cool.
Along with the Secretari Titan Guard.
Great stuff. So a different character than we've seen before. So we're really looking forward to that. Now, one thing to note quickly. Now, this game was filmed after the new FAQ had come out from Forge World in, I think it was in February, maybe,
yep,
or very recently, and essentially revised the rules for Iron Hands Immortal. So they reduced the points, which was absolutely fantastic. So I've got a lot more Iron Hands for less now, I guess. Now, because the army was commissioned by from Ben Pointer, he's super busy, and he hasn't been able to. I haven't been able to send him models to get painted to bring the list back up to full 2,000 points. So I will be running the same list as before, but it's cheaper. It's gone down to 1865 now, which is brilliant. So James has compiled a list to the same points. I'd love to have gone to 2K, but it's just getting those extra models painted and the league times for Ben. He's such an amazing painter. He was so super busy, so just couldn't quite get it in time. So all we've done is reduce the points. And going forward, all of the Challenge Channel games will be at this points level as well. So it's 1865. So if you want to come on and challenge like James has done today, then please write your 1865 list. Just email me with the details and we'll sort it out. But James, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Two of my favourite armies on the battlefield. Mechanicum is always close to my heart, but since playing the Iron Hands Immortals, I've really gotten to love them. And we might see some games later on featuring both the Thalax and the Immortals as well, a bit of a combined thing. But more on that in the coming months. Let's get on with it.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's have a look at the lists.
1,865 points of Mechanicum. They are Ordo Reductor, led by an Archmagos Reductor, and his Warlord trait is Strategic Genius, allowing him to re-roll reserves. Leading the Ordo Reductor into battle today, we have the Archmagos Reductor. He has 2 Power Fists, one of which is Mastercrafted, a Photon Thruster, Rad Grenades, a Machinator Array, an Abeyant, a Cortex Controller, a Cyber Familiar, a Jinskane, and 2 Cyber Ocularis. Second HQ choice for the Ordo Reductor is a Secretari Axiarch. He has a Refractor Field, a Radium Pistol, a Chiropatris Field Generator, Titan Shard Armour, a Power Sword, and an Omnispex. He also has Binaric Stratagems, and he has chosen to use Extinction Interlock, which gives him preferred enemy infantry. The Ordo Reductor's elite unit is 6 Myrmidon Secutors. They all have their power axes, refractor fields, and they also all have 2 phased plasma fusils. As troops choices, the Mechanicum have brought along 2 Thalax cohorts. Both are 3 strong, and both are Emporites. The Mechanicum's sole fast attack choice is a cohort of 4 Vorax. They all have biocorrosive ammunition. Finally, the detachment's sole heavy support choice is 6 Myrmidon Destructors, all with Volkite Culverins and Power Fists.
1,865 points of Iron Hands, led by Ortec Moore. His Warlord trait is Murderous Arsenal. Leading the Iron Hands is Ortek Moore. He's equipped in Cataphractii Terminator armor. He's equipped with a servo harness, Cortex controller, Paragon blade, and Volkite charger. His warlord trait is Murderous Arsenal, which gives him and a unit he joins preferred enemy special rule, which allows him to reroll fail to hit and to wounds roll of 1 when attacking its hated foe in the shooting and combat phase. Elites are 2 Contemptor Dreadnoughts, both armed with Carey's assault cannons. Both have chain fists, but one has a inbuilt graviton gun and the other an inbuilt melter gun. Both have been upgraded to have extra armour. Troops for the Iron Hands, because I'm using the Bitter Iron Rite of War, it makes all Immortals squads as troops. I've taken 3 squads of 15 Iron Hands Immortals, all armed with Volkite chargers. 3 have been upgraded to take melter guns. The Sergeant is equipped with Artificer armour, a melter bomb, and a breaching charge. The Immortals gain the Immortal Hatred special rule, which gives them hatred against traitors, and that allows them to reroll all fails to hit rolls during the first turn of each close combat phase. They also have the Bitter Duty special rule, and that gives them the Stubborn special rule whilst in the enemy's deployment zone. Right, we're deployed and ready to go. James, I'm not keen, is what I'm trying to say. Those Vorax have come up front quite quickly.
Yeah, they're scouting forwards. Yeah.
So the Vorax scouted 6 inches. One key thing I noticed when James was setting up, and I said to him, well, what weapons above strength 6 have you got? And he goes, oh, well, you've got a photon thruster.
Yeah, on the Archmagos, and lightning guns on the Vorax and the Thalax, so not much.
Yeah, so you'll see in the deployment just now, I've put the Contemptors up forward because I have a feel they're going to be a big impact on the game. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure, but that's my plan. I'm going to run those Contemptors forward, shoot as much stuff as I can, then rely on the Iron Hands behind. But James, I'm absolutely fearsome of that Destructor unit with the what I can't remember what they're called.
You've got the Culverins, and then the Secuitors have the Plasma as well. So yeah, they're quite nasty. I'm hoping that their fire can have an effect.
A huge amount of firepower.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see how this goes. James, good luck to you.
Yeah, good luck, mate.
Looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Mechanicum turn 1.
Auto Reductor movement phase turn 1 and the Myrmidons have started their steady march up the corridor. They're readying their weapons accompanied by the Archmagos and the Secretary Axiarch. The door in front has been opened for them by the Cyber Ocularis that the Archmagos sent to activate the terminal. Meanwhile, the Vorax are moving quickly up the corridor as well. Auto Reductor shooting phase turn 1, and making use of the Cortex controller range from the Archmagos, the Vorax have run forwards another 4 inches, trying to close the distance. Unfortunately for the Myrmidon Secutors, they have found themselves out of range with their plasma fusils, but the Archmagos decided to take on the first Contemptor with a couple of shots from his photon thruster. He got 2 hits, but both of them bounced harmlessly from the frontal armour of the Dreadnought. The only thing we have left to fire now is the Myrmidon Destructors. The Myrmidon Destructors open fire with their Volkite Culverins. They managed 23 hits out of 24 shots, and that turned into 18 wounds thanks to preferred enemy, but only 4 Immortals fell, despite taking a huge number of armour saves and feel no pain rolls. It was enough to force a morale check on the Iron Hands, but they passed just with a roll of a 9.
Iron Hands movement phase turn 1. Well, we lost 4 Immortals in the Mechanicum's first turn, so that unit of Destructors is absolutely brilliant, isn't it? It really peeled those Immortals off. But nevertheless, the Contemptors have walked forward 6 inches towards the oncoming Vorax and the Secutors. My plan here is to at least drop 2 of the Vorax, if not more, from the combined firepower from the Contemptor and the Immortals there. They are high toughness to the Vorax, but don't forget we've got Rending, and the AP value of that Carey's assault cannon will rip through the Vorax, hopefully, but we'll see. And then we've got the buffer there to stop the Vorax charging into the Immortals. And then the other flank, we again just push forward with the Contemptor. I need to probably take at least one of those Secutors out to stop the incoming fire next turn. The depleted unit behind has just shuffled up, and I've kept this unit in the back here with Alltech Moore because I know there's some Thalax somewhere that are going to use their Emphyrite special rule to deep strike into my line, so into the Iron Hands line. So we'll see what happens. Iron Hands shooting phase turn 1. 14 shots from the Volkites went out from the Iron Hands Immortals into the Vorax. They scored 10 hits from 14 shots and only managed 2 rending wounds, which was really terrible, really. And the Vorax made one of the cover saves, with the lead Vorax taking a wound. Next to fire from the Iron Hands was the Contemptor. Had a really bad round of shooting from the Contemptor. The Melter Gun went out and took a wound off the lead Vorax, which was great. But then the Careys came in, and that was going to be my shining star of this turn, but hit all 6 times, but only caused 1 wound, which was horrendous. The AP4, of course, would have just ripped through the Vorax, only needing a 4 to wound, but it was enough to kill the first Vorax, which is great. I'm probably going to charge. It's a 10-inch charge, but I think it'll be definitely worth it, but I'll make that decision in a second. The Iron Hands Contemptor on the right-hand flank shot his Carey's assault cannon into the Myrmidon Secutors. Not a bad round, scored 4 hits, and 3 wounds, and luckily the lead Secutor fell. So that was really good. Need to get rid of the firepower of that unit. It's absolutely monstrous. So really good round of shooting. The Immortals behind, they didn't have range to anything, so they just stood behind their Contemptor, using that as a shield almost. The Contemptor on the left flank here, I've decided not to assault the Vorax, mainly because the Vorax will obviously get to shoot in Overwatch, which could immobilise him or even take a weapon off. But crucially, if James does decide to charge me, at least I'll get the Overwatch with the Contemptor. So that will really help out. That's the end of the Iron Hands turn. Not a bad round of shooting, but the next turn needs to be a lot better if we're going to try and mitigate the damage coming from these Mechanicum.
Mechanicum movement phase turn 2 and the Thalax have arrived. They've engaged their teleporters and appeared with no mishaps, which is a minor miracle. This cohort over here was called in by the Archmagos with his Jinskein, so they didn't scatter. They are preparing to flank the Iron Hands. Meanwhile, the Archmagos and the Myrmidon Secutors, followed by the Myrmidon Destructors, continue their lumbering march up the corridor. And the Vorax are now out of Cortex controller range, so they are heading towards the nearest viable target. Unfortunately for them, that is a Contemptor Dreadnought, but they're going to do their best to take it out. Mechanicum shooting phase turn 2, and the newly arrived Thalax have started to run, but they've only moved 2 inches over on this flank, and over on the far flank they only ran a single inch. They're obviously still readjusting to teleportation shock. Meanwhile, helped out by the Cyber Ocularis that has zoomed up behind them, allowing them to use the Archmagos' Jinskein, the Vorax fired their lightning guns into the Contemptor, but although they got 2 hits, neither could do anything to the Dreadnought. The Myrmidon Secutors absolutely hosed the corridor in front of them with plasma. Out of their 30 shots, they managed 29 hits thanks to hitting on 2s and preferred enemy infantry given to them by the Secutari Axiarch. They managed to do 23 wounds on the Medusan Immortals, and that has thinned down that squad a lot. There are only 2 Iron Hands left standing. They now have to face the firepower of both the Archmagos and the Myrmidon Destructors. Combined firepower from the Archmagos with his photon thruster and long range from the Myrmidon Destructors behind him easily took out the last 2 Medusan Immortals on this flank. Auto Reductor Assault phase turn 2, and the Vorax leapt towards the Iron Hands Contemptor Dreadnought. He passed his reaction fire check, so he could fire at full ballistic skill, but he missed with his melter gun, and the Kerry's assault cannons, despite hosing the front Vorax, only managed to cause a single wound. The Vorax have closed in for the kill. The Vorax crashed into the Contemptor Dreadnought and laid in with their power blades. They managed to get 2 penetrating hits, neither of which were saved by the Iron Hands Dreadnought, but it was only shaken and stunned. The Dreadnought responded with a sweep of his chain fist. He has caused another wound to the lead Vorax. End of Mechanicum, turn 2, and the Thalax have begun to thrust forward. This cohort has moved 8 inches, while on the other flank, this Thalax cohort have obviously recovered from their teleportation shock. They have moved 12 boxcars.
Iron Hands movement phase turn 2. Not a lot happened here. The Contemptor on the right hand side has moved back 6 inches to increase the gap between the Destructors and the Secutors. They have lumbering advance, so they're going to take quite a while to get to me. So I just need to keep those Carey shots coming in and depleting those plasma fusils. I'm a little bit worried about the Vorax units on either side of the flank, but they're going to take a while to get to the rear door, by which time we can move the Immortals to intercept them if we can. Very unfortunate about losing 2 whole points to the Vorax with the Contemptor. I would have liked the Contemptor to perhaps be over to the left or the right so I can get the unit of Immortals in, but I have a feeling that the Vorax will kill the Dreadnought this turn, and then they'll consolidate, and then at least the Immortals then will get an Overwatch attack against the Vorax as they have to charge me in the next turn. So that'll be interesting. Other than that, not a lot going on. Iron Hands shooting phase turn 2. The Iron Hands on the left-hand flank fired 3 melter guns into the Cyber Ocularis, getting 3 hits and 3 wounds, and unfortunately the Cyber Ocularis failed its cover save. Then on the right-hand flank, the other Contemptor opened up into the Secutors, managing 5 hits, and because the Carrier's assault pattern has rending, it rends on a 5 in Zone Mortalis, which means I got 3 rending hits and an armor save, and unfortunately James failed all of his saves, so it took down 2 of the Secutors, which was a brilliant round of shooting from the Contemptor. Certainly made up for it for shooting against the Vorax with the other. Now we're going to go straight into combat between the Vorax and the Iron Hands Contemptor. Iron Hands turn to assault, and that was a bit of a turn up for the books, I have to say. The both units striking at initiative 4, but the Contemptor struck first. Only got 1 hit and 1 wound, but it was enough to kill the Vorax at the front, so that was great news. Then the Vorax struck back with their 9 attacks. Unfortunately, only 2 hits went through, but they failed to penetrate the front armor of the Contemptor, tying that unit up in combat. The Vorax are fearless, so that will just continue. So an absolute result there. End of turn for the Iron Hands, turn 2. Quite pleased with that turn. Taking out the Secutors was great, and then surviving in combat against the Vorax was even better. I think I've done enough work to stave off the Mechanicum for the next couple of turns, but we'll see what I've got in store.
Mechanicum movement phase turn 3, and the advance of the Myrmidons continues down this corridor towards the Contemptor. Meanwhile, on both flanks, the Thalax are moving up these corridors, trying to get behind the Iron Hands position. And, of course, the Vorax are still locked in assault with the Contemptor Dreadnought. Mechanicum shooting phase turn 3, and the only weapon on this side of the battlefield that could hurt the Contemptor is the Photon Thruster, fired by the Archmagos. He managed to get a glancing hit, but it was saved by the Atomantic shielding. But he has achieved something. The Dreadnought is blinded. Meanwhile, on both flanks, the Thalax cohorts continue to rush forwards. Auto-Reductor assault phase turn 3, and the Vorax decided to try and smash the Contemptor to take its last hull point. They did manage to get a glancing hit, but made his 6+ invulnerable save. He swung back with his chain fist, causing 2 wounds on another Vorax, and that Contemptor is proving a thorn in the side of the Mechanicum over this side of the battlefield. Meanwhile, the Thalax cohorts, they have engaged their jetpacks. They are continuing to move round behind the Iron Hands.
Iron Hands turn 3 movement. Unfortunately, on the left-hand flank here, we're playing a little bit cowardly. I was so disappointed to have failed the blind check from the photon thruster for that Contemptor. Just means now that he's snap shooting and makes him less effective. So I have backed up 6 inches just to increase that gap. Eventually, though, the Mechanicum will move forward and I need to hold them off. But I'm hoping by then the Contemptor will be out of combat with the Vorax and then we'll be able to pincer movement the Secutors maybe. These Thalax are going to be a massive pain, so I've decided to move the Immortals close to that door to restrict the Thalax as they eventually come through. Autekmore has stayed with the squad, but I think I might detach him in the next turn to join the unit next to him. Other than that, not a lot of movement, and also not a lot of shooting. Iron Hands turn 3 shooting. The Iron Hands Contemptor shot at the Myrmidon Secutors. Despite needing 6s to hit, I managed to get 2 hits, which was really great, and 1 wounded, which was rending and put a wound on the Secutor in the front squad there, in the front rank, so that was really good. No other shooting anywhere else, and now we're straight into combat with the Vorax. Iron Hands Assault Phase turn 3. Combat between the Contemptor and the Vorax went really well. The Contemptor struck out with 3 attacks, only hitting twice, but taking the final wound on the Vorax, killing him. He did explode, didn't wound the Vorax next to him, but wounded 9 Iron Hands Immortals, which was unfortunate. Thankfully, though, they passed all their armor saves, which was great. The Vorax then struck back at Initiative 4, so they had 6 attacks, got 5 hits, but unfortunately no rending attacks went through, so the Contemptor was spared there. Remember, he's only got 1 whole point left, so we're hanging on for dear life. So a really great result over there. Other than that, that's the end of the turn, and now we go into Mechanicum turn 4.
Auto Reductor movement phase turn 4, and the advance of the Myrmidons is continuing. They are getting near their objective now, but they are lumbering along. They're very slow. And the Thalax, they are moving around the back of the Iron Hands now, but it looks like the Iron Hands have got that rear entrance covered, so not sure what to do with them. Meanwhile, the Vorax, the lone surviving Vorax, is desperately trying to deal with this Iron Hands Contemptor and his last remaining hull point. Auto Reductor shooting phase turn 4, and the Myrmidons turn their attention to the squad of Immortals that they can now see down this corridor, although only one of the Secutors could see. He still unleashed a wall of plasma that incinerated 3 of the Iron Hands. These Secutors really are devastating, combined with preferred enemy from the Axiarch. Meanwhile, the Thalax on the flanks, they are biding their time, pondering when to strike. Mechanicum Assault Phase turn 4, and the Iron Hands Contemptor swiped the lone remaining Thalax twice more, with his chain fist leaving the battle automata on a single wound. The Vorax tried to smash back but missed. Looks like this Contemptor is going to achieve total victory over the Vorax Maniple.
Iron Hands movement turn 4. On the right hand side, the Contemptor has now moved forward 6 inches, and he's going to shoot and charge that unit in front of him. We need some really good rolling there to make him effective. Combat between the Vorax Contemptor is going really well. My hope is to finish off the Vorax in this turn. It's only got 1 wound left. The Immortals have moved forward. They don't have a line of sight, or it's very narrow to the Secutors, so we're going to try and cause a couple of wounds with them. And finally, the 15-man Immortal squad at the back has stopped at the door. We're just covering that back entrance. You know, if the Mechanicum get into this box or the first line over the deployment zone, then they've taken the victory. So we're just trying to hold them off. It does mean that I've had to divert 15 Immortals, which takes them away from the main front line, which I assume was James's plan all along. So that's a little bit unfortunate. And Autekmore has broken out from this Immortal squad and joined the Immortal squad in front. I imagine that James will either charge the Contemptor or the Immortal squad, tie me up in combat, use those power axes, and then hopefully stay there and score the victory. We shall find out. Iron Hands turn 4 shooting. A very interesting turn of shooting. I shot 9 Volkite chargers into the squad of Secutors in front of them. Only got 3 rending and 1 wound, but James made some absolutely amazing saves and saved all of them, which was brilliant. And then finally, the 3 melter gunners opened up. Only hit with 2 of them. James then did his invulnerable save, saved 1, failed 1, which did kill the Secutor on 1 wound. So just unreal shooting phase there. We're now going to go on to the Contemptor that is stood in front of the Secutors. Shooting from the Contemptor into the Magos Reductor and his unit of Secutors was quite interesting. I shot the Graviton gun first of all, managed to hit, doing 5 hits on the squad, which resulted in 1 wound on the Magos, which was really, really great. So pleased with that. And then the Contemptor shot out, got 6 hits, only 3 normal wounds, which James then looked out Sir to a Secutor, and then unfortunately failed 2, killing a Secutor. So that's really, really great news. Definitely putting the pressure on that unit now. All that's left to do now is to charge the Contemptor into the Secutor's unit. Iron Hands Assault Phase turn 4. The Contemptor charged into the Ordo Reductor, Magos and his Secutors. The Hammer of Wrath going in caused a wound, which James looked out Sir onto the Secutor, which he then failed his 3-up armor save and caused a wound, which was brilliant. James did pass his reactionary fire test for Overwatch, but decided not to shoot the photon thruster at the Contemptor, just in case he got hot. So now we are into combat. The Contemptor struck in at initiative 4 with 4 attacks, getting 3 hits and 3 wounds. Unfortunately, the Ordo Reductor is toughness 6, so he can't instant kill him, unfortunately. So James made the 3-up invulnerable save, saving 1, but taking 2 wounds. So the Archmados Reductor is down to 1 wound, which is brilliant news. Striking back was the Ordo Reductor Magos there. With his double fist attacks and the Machinator Ray, caused 5 penetrating hits on the Contemptor Dreadnought. But I had an amazing round of invulnerable saves and managed to save 3 of them. So 2 penetrating hits went through, but only managed a shaken result. So I got away really lightly there. I also suffered rather a weapon destroyed, which was the Carey's Pattern Assault Cannon. So really, really lucky to have survived that combat. The other 2 models in combat, which is the Secutor and the other special character, they don't have any weapons that can harm the Contemptor, so we are locked up. I think that may have helped me out massively now, so let's see what happens. Final combat of the game was the Contemptor versus the Vorax. The Vorax decided to strike at initiative using his attacks and the rending. Unfortunately, James rolled 3-1, so no hits went through onto the Contemptor. The Contemptor then attacked back, scored 2 hits, 2 wounds, killing the Vorax, which was good. And then the Contemptor consolidated 2 inches just to give a little bit of space for the Immortals to move through in the next turn. Those Contemptors have really done really well for me. So pleased to have survived like they have. You know, the invulnerable saves I made them were pretty spectacular. We're now going to go into the Mechanicum turn.
Mechanicum movement phase turn 5, and the Archmagos Reductor cannot believe that the Dreadnought is still standing in his way. That has really stalled the advance of the Myrmidons. That, very well, may have cost the Mechanicum dearly. But the Thalax have now commenced their assault on the rear of the Iron Hands position. 1 cohort's moved round and opened a door, and we've got another cohort that are moving along the corridor in support as well. We are hoping for a jetpack move to get them into the Iron Hands deployment zone. Mechanicum shooting phase turn 5, and the Thalax have finally opened fire with their lightning guns, but they had no effect at all on the wall of shields in front of them. Meanwhile, the other cohort of Thalax are running up in support. Mechanicum assault phase turn 5, and with a swipe of his chain fist, the Contemptor took out the last Myrmidon Secutor, who bravely interposed himself between the Dreadnought and his Archmagos. That annoyed the Archmagos sufficiently to grab the Dreadnought with both of his power fists and tear it to pieces. But he's only got 1 wound remaining. He is looking very exposed. Meanwhile, the Thalax at the back, they tried to leap over the wall of Iron Hands defending this area, but they could not go far enough with their jetpack moves. They are bracing themselves for a counter-attack now.
Iron Hands turn 5 movement. Wow, what a turn. I lost the Contemptor, but I lost it in the right turn, so at least now I can make a move on the HQ. So the 15-man Immortal squad with Autek Moore has moved up. Our plan is to shoot and charge. The Contemptor moved over slightly just so he's got a line of sight on the Exiarch. We kind of want to kill him if we can. And then finally at the back there, the Immortal Squad have moved an inch away from the Thalax. Our plan is to shoot and charge. And hopefully that'll be enough to secure the game in turn 5, but we'll have a look. Iron Hand shooting turn 5. The Contemptor Dreadnought shot at the Exiarch. He's the only model in that squad that he can see. 4 shots hit, 3 wounds went through. James did some amazing and vulnerable saves, and he only took 1 wound, so he's got 2 left. Continuing on, the Immortal Squad in front of the Exiarch and the Auto Reductor Magos fired 3 melter guns and 10 Volkite shots, and it was just enough to take the final wound from the Magos and the 2 wounds from the Exiarch, wiping out that unit. So that was an absolutely great result. Have no doubt that the Myrmidons will move forward, shoot, and possibly annihilate that squad. But I think we've done enough. All that's remaining to do now is to shoot the Thalax in the backfield. The Immortal Squad shot at the Thalax unit at the backfield here. So shot 3 melters and 24 Volkite shots. Managed to kill the lead Thalax and put one of the Thalax on 1 wound. They then promptly passed their stubborn leadership test, so they're not going anywhere. Our intention is to charge them just to plug that gap. And that's all we've got for this turn. Iron Hands Assault Phase, turn 5. The Iron Hands charged into the 2 remaining Thalax. No Overwatch was taken from the Immortals, which was great news. The Immortals then struck, managed to put 2 wounds on the Thalax, so now they had each a wound left. The Thalax then struck back, 2 hits and 2 wounds, but the Iron Hands made their save. Then the Iron Hands lost combat, failed their leadership, and then the Iron Hands managed to cut them down with the shooting. Remembering now that they now shoot on their ballistic skill rather than overwatching, and then they don't consolidate, so they have to stay still. But that was a great round of combat from the Immortals, who are just keeping the Mechanicum out of range.
Mechanicum, movement phase turn 6, and with the death of the Archmagos and the Myrmidon Secutors, it all rests now on the mighty shoulders of the Myrmidon Destructors and the Thalax. The Myrmidon Destructors are moving up the corridor. They're going to unleash their Volkite Culverins on these Iron Hands Immortals. Charge in, hopefully kill them, consolidate for the win. We shall see. Meanwhile, the last remaining Thalax cohort, they're getting ready to trigger their jetpacks to try a sneaky move into the Iron Hands deployment zone. It's asking a lot of them as well. We shall see. Mechanicum shooting phase turn 6, and the Myrmidon Destructors were once again pleased to unleash their Volkite Culverins, having not shot them for a couple of turns. They unleashed hell on the Iron Hands, but their armour and their Feel No Pain proved very difficult to get through. Only 3 Iron Hands fell. Meanwhile, right at the rear of the Iron Hands deployment zone, the 3 Thalax managed to take out 1 Immortal with their lightning guns. Auto Reductor Assault Phase turn 6, and the Myrmidon Destructors are determined to fight for the win here. They have made their charge with 11 inches, and fortunately for them, the Iron Hands failed their reaction fire initiative check. They only managed 4 hits, and they did no wounds to the Myrmidon Destructors. They are getting in with their power fists. Meanwhile, the last Thalax cohort tried to use their jetpacks to jump over the Iron Hands in their path, but they only rolled a 7, so they have decided to retreat. Now it's all down to the Myrmidons. Ortec Moore bellows a challenge at the Myrmidon Destructors, but the Myrmidon Lord has got other ideas. The Myrmidons are stubborn. He has leadership 9. They are in a scoring position currently, so he has refused the challenge. We need him to stay alive so that they pass their leadership check if they lose the combat and hang around. The Iron Hands have struck though. The Immortals managed to do a single wound to a Myrmidon Destructor, and Ortec Moore just about within 2 inches there. He swung over the top with his Paragon Blade and cut through another Destructor. Now it is the Myrmidons' turn to fight back. The Myrmidon Destructors swung back with their power fists, helped by preferred enemy, but the Iron Hands were very adept at warding off the blows. Only 2 of the Immortals fell, meaning that the Iron Hands won the combat by 1. Fortunately, the Myrmidon Lord's gambit paid off, and his Myrmidon Destructors have held position. They are currently scoring, and it's up to Ortec Moore and his Immortals to wipe them out or force them back.
Iron Hands, movement phase, turn 6. This is the last turn of the game, and the Iron Hands need to destroy that Myrmidon unit because at the moment they are scoring. In the rules, it states that it doesn't matter if the Iron Hands are contesting. It's just that you need to get an enemy model within the deployment zone, which James has done so. So we need to destroy that unit. It's a bit of a tough job, really. Ortec Moore didn't do particularly well in the last turn of combat, so he needs to try a little bit more if he can. The Contemptor has moved round, but it's only more of a cursory movement more than anything else. He can't really impact the game now. And then finally, the Immortals at the bottom here, their plan is just to move forward, shoot the Thalax, and destroy them from the enemy, from the Iron Hands lines. This combat is going to be very, very difficult for the Immortals. The only thing I've got in my favour really is my Sergeant, or the Sergeant rather, he has a demo charge. So providing that goes well, we're going to stick a demo charge on that unit and hopefully do a bit more damage. It is AP3, which will help us out and force James to take his invulnerable saves for those destructors. So let's see what happens. Iron Hands shooting phase, turn 6. The Immortals opened up onto the Thalax, so I had 2 Melters and 10 Volkite shots shot into the Thalax, killed the lead Thalax. Then they failed their leadership and ran back 15 inches, so they are now fleeing. So they won't count as scoring, so that's great news. And now we're into the combat between the Sectors, Ortec Moore, and the Iron Hands Immortals. Iron Hands assault phase, turn 6. Wow, what a round. The Immortals attacked, managed to take down the Sector with 1 wound, so they killed him, which was great. Ortec Moore struck with his Paragon Blade, getting a 6 for a murder strike and killing one of the destructors. The Iron Hands Sergeant, armed with a demo charge, then chucked that into the combat, managed to get 3 hits, which then killed one of the destructors outright. So he took 3 down in that turn, which was brilliant news. Now the Sectors will attack Initiative 1 along with Ortec Moore's servo arm, and then we really need to force the Sectors onto a leadership test so they fail. If they don't fail, then the Mechanicum have won the game. So it all hinges on this last turn. Striking Initiative 1, the Destructors struck. They hit twice, but only wounded once, but those Immortal Shields held up and managed to deflect the blow. Ortec Moore came in with his servo arm. It hit, but failed to wound, unfortunately. Now the combat is over. James needs a leadership of 9 because the Destructors are stubborn. If he fails, he'll fall back and the Iron Hands will win. If he passes, they'll stay stuck in combat and the Mechanicum will win, challenge the channel. James, let's have a leadership roll. Oh, wow. And 11 was rolled. How far do they fall back? 2d6.
You can shoot at them.
Oh, yes. Okay, so they fall back 9, but the Iron Hands will get an opportunity to shoot, so let's see how many wounds we can do. The final action of Iron Hands turn 6 was for the Iron Hands Immortals to gun them down, and they shot into the back of the Destructors, causing a couple of hits but no wounds, which is a bit of a shame. I'd like to have finished them off as they ran off, but it doesn't matter. The Iron Hands have miraculously secured their deployment zone on the last roll of a dice. Great news. That's it. Challenge the Channel number 9 is done and dusted, and the Iron Hands narrowly took victory. James, it just came down to a leadership test.
It did, yeah, really close at the end. I thought the Destructors were going to come to my rescue, just sneaking into your deployment zone, but their nerve failed them.
I mean, unbelievable. I mean, James and I talked quite a bit about this, and the invulnerable saves that I made on the Iron Hands Contemptor, I think probably won me the game because it just tied you up a little bit too long. But it was just unreal.
Yeah, both of your Contemptors, they stood like a pair of Guardians, just couldn't get through them. I thought the Vorax would eventually take down the first Contemptor, and the Archmagos, well, I don't think he could believe that the Contemptor stood up to him, but there we go. Saved the day for the Iron Hands, and well played. It was, really good. Yeah, the Gambit with the Thalax, I thought it was a good idea at the time.
Well, because if people are wondering why James did that, because the rules for thrust moves means they can move over intervening models and terrain.
Yeah.
So, the ceiling height, it's whatever it is, but they could have jumped over. And if they'd managed to get the last Thalax within over 2 inches from the unit of mortars, they would have been in that deployment zone. So it was a good gambit.
Yeah.
I think originally James was thinking maybe of deep striking them in, though, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Well, they did arrive by deep strike,
Sure.
but I chickened out in the end and brought them in close to my own lines in plenty of space, so they didn't teleport into a wall and die.
Well, that's it, you see, because when you deep strike in the zone, much less you get a +1 on the roll, so it is quite dangerous. But it may have paid off. You just needed to weather maybe a turn or two of shooting. But
I did think maybe delay them, bring them in a bit later, but in the end, I thought bring them in while it's safe and just thrust round. But yeah, maybe I should have deep struck them later on.
Such an amazing game, and and don't forget, because of the rules for the Iron Hands Immortals now, there is a quite a big points difference now. I think they're 50. I think about 50 points of squad reduction, which did, fortunately for the Iron Hands, reduce you down by 2 Vorax.
Yeah. Maybe a cohort of 6 could have got through that Contemptor. Maybe. But.
Yeah, I mean, I have never made so many invulnerable saves, and by rights, those Vorax should have just tore through that Contemptor and then moved into the Immortals. But as we always say, it's a dice game. It's just the way it goes. But James has been an absolutely fantastic opponent. I think I was so worried at the list. I was fretting when you told me this morning what the list was.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be shock and awe, and they did quite well. They have a lot of firepower.
Well, the opening round took out the entire 15 man, didn't it?
It did, yeah. The Secutors, yeah.
It's a monstrous unit. I can always imagine that unit sat in a Trios, get out and just annihilate anything in front of it.
They do. They literally click delete on squads on the open battlefield. Yeah, they're really good, but they do seem to fall quite quickly.
The bullet magnet.
That's it.
Well, we are definitely going to see more of James and his Secutors, and maybe we will see those Secutors in the trials in future games. So we're looking forward to seeing them again. Now, don't forget, if you want to take on the challenge, please email me or message me on social media. I'll send you the details, but you need an 1865 points army list. It's changed now because of the points reduction from the FAQs. It was 2k, we're down to 1865 now. So just bear that in mind when building your list. We've got a guy, John Dorian, coming from Ireland. He's got a job in England, and he's going to come and film a Challenger Channel in the next one. So we'll see John in the next game. But as I say, if you want to have a go at Challenger Channel, we need your toughest, nastiest list you can possibly build and bring it on and take on the Iron Hands. I really hope you've enjoyed today's game. It's been an absolute blast. James, thank you so much for coming by and filming.
Thanks for having me, mate. Great fun.
Good stuff. We will see a bit more of James in the future. But that was Challenger Channel Series 9 or Episode 9. We'll look forward to Episode 10. We'll see you soon.